Alright, what's going on, everybody? It's a little windy out here, so you'll have to excuse me if it gets blustery in the microphone. Hopefully it won't be too bad. Gonna go over real quick on how I clean my dirt bike. And I only have these few things. I've been using this method for a long time, and it works really well. First, you take... This is nothing more than about 30% simple green mixed with water in a regular garden sprayer. So I highly recommend a garden sprayer because trying to use a trigger sprayer will just about wear your hands out, and it may be good for, developing forearm muscles, but garden sprayer is the ticket on how you dispense your cleaner solution on the bike. And this can be for anything, if you wash a car, street bike, dirt bike, ATV, whatever. I always keep this container filled with this solution at all times. Okay, so simple green and water. And then you can use, pretty much any sort of brush. This one's kind of a soft bristle brush, which is good for wheels and tires. This one's a little more aggressive, a little more coarse. So, any sort of brush that you have works fine. And if you saw some videos a year or two ago, this is a 2200 PSI electric pressure washer. And I really, really like it. It's so easy to use. It's quiet. It's easy to move around. It gets the job done without being overkill. So definitely, I'll put a link down below for where you can get one of these. Totally awesome. And then when you're done cleaning the bike, you dry it off with a leaf blower. Now they make other kinds of electric drying devices. Those are good as well, but a basic leaf blower really gets the job done on drying the bike off, because you don't want to store the bike wet. You always want to dry it completely after you're finished washing it. Same with any of your boots or your helmet or anything. Try to store everything dry, and they'll last longer. Anyway, there's that. And then we will look at Mr. White here. Good old Mr. White. Many of you are already familiar with Mr. White. I put the bike on a work stand. That way you can spin the wheels. Makes it really easy to clean everything off, that you can spin the wheels. And now this bike is not filthy, but it is kind of dirty. So let's take a closer look at how dirty this bike is. Okay, it's not muddy. It's just more dusty than anything. Okay? But you notice how, I live in northern Georgia, where the dirt is mostly clay. And that's that reddish color powder that you see all over everything. The issue is, if you try to just wash this bike off and not use some kind of dirt removing solution like Simple Green, you won't get those tires good and black again. Same with any rubber pieces, they won't get good and black. So you can use any kind of dirt removing solution. I just happen to use Simple Green because it's easy to get, not very expensive, and I use it for all kinds of other stuff. So, but if your bike is considerably muddy, then you definitely need to rinse the mud and the caked up mud off first. You can use a mud scraper. I'll put links down below for what a mud scraper is. Very handy little flat device that doesn't scratch items like a screwdriver might. And you especially could use it under the fenders if you're getting a lot of caked up mud underneath there. But there are also tricks on how to keep mud from getting caked up on your fenders as well, and I'll go over that later on. All right, so this bike is not filthy, but we do want to rinse it off first. So yeah, we rinse the bike off first with just your regular pressure washer, and get the heavy caked up stuff off, you know, under the fenders and everything, under the subframe, in the main frame, under your skid plate and all that. Get all your caked up mud off first. Then we'll come back and spray whatever cleaning solution you want to spray on, and you'll let it soak for just a brief time, you know, 30 seconds to a minute. Let it soak in, and also, depending on how muddy the bike is, you could just go ahead and rinse it off with a pressure washer, and it might be good to go just from that application. However, if it's a little worse, that first application of dirt remover, you might have to do some scrubbing with your brushes, and then you can rinse it off, and it may look beautiful after that too. So it really depends on how dirty your bike is. Okay, so what we're going to do is just hit it with a pressure washer real quick, and then we'll keep going. So hang tight. Now you notice how quiet an electric pressure washer is. When you shut it off, it's no longer noisy. You know, compared to a gas-powered, you know, combustion engine pressure washer. This is why I like the electric ones. They are so quiet. This is why we want to keep the wheels off the ground, because they're so much easier to clean if they can spin on their own. And you also want to make sure you get underneath everything. You know, that's why I also like to have the bike off the ground a few inches, because it's easier to get down below and be able to look underneath things, because mud will hide from you in there. So, you know, make sure you really look down below, upward, and you'll find a lot of mud that you may have missed. Now, when you're near the airbox inputs, you know, here and here, I mean, if your air filter is still installed, it's not that big a deal, because you've got to clean the air filter anyway. So as far as water getting in there, I mean, you don't want to blast it at 1,000,000 PSI right in those inputs, but you could spray a little bit in there, and you can do even better if you take the seat off and lightly spray your dirt remover in the airbox itself, and gently spray your water in there. You know, just do that gently, and you can keep your airbox really clean, which will let your air filter stay clean longer. Okay, so that's another tip for you. All right, so we'll keep going. Okay, now when cleaning the chain, it's also good to have the bike off the ground, so you can blast the side. I mean, I don't use an O-ring chain. I just use a standard Regina or RK chain. And you want to blast it from all angles also. Okay, now let's have a closer look here. Now what you see is only been done with water so far. It looks good, right? I mean, it looks nice. But once the tires dry, they would still have kind of a grayish brown kind of tint to them. And I personally am not a fan of that. So that's where your dirt removing solution comes in, like Simple Green, something like that. But what you see here is nothing more than the pressure washer. Okay. So, next step, we will spray it down with our dirt remover. Okay, so we get our garden sprayer like this. It's pressurized just like that, so you don't have to keep, using it like a trigger sprayer. And we just go to town on it. Now, if it's sunny or windy like it is today, I try to break up the bikes into halves because you don't want this solution to dry on your bike. So I'm just going to do like the front portion, and I just basically spray everything. And you can actually see the dirt start to dissolve. What little dirt is remaining on here, you'll see it start to dissolve on the tire. That's the beauty of a product like Simple Green, or there's all kinds of other products that can do that sort of thing. And just basically spray her all down. Okay, now here's where the soft bristle brush would come into play. This little guy right here. I mean, you could have a bucket of your solution, however you want to do it. But I take the soft brush here and then spin the tire, starting from the rim. Another reason why you want the wheels off the ground, because it makes this part so much easier and faster. Clean your spokes, clean your rim, scrub everything underneath. And just keep it going. And the cleaner you keep your bike, the easier it is to keep it clean, if that makes sense. It's just like anything else, just like your car or your ATV, your dirt bike, your boat, whatever. If you regularly keep it clean, it makes it much easier to stay clean. Always make sure you get underneath the exhaust, because dirt gets caked up underneath here and sometimes baked on as well. So make sure you keep the exhaust good and clean, because the worse it gets, it becomes really difficult to stay clean. Okay, I'm just going to do the front half of the bike here, because you see this takes a couple of minutes and you don't want this solution to dry on the bike. Okay, that's that. Then we'll rinse that off and keep going. I also like to wash from the top down. When you're rinsing and everything, make sure you do it from the top down, and that's the same on a car or anything else. Always wash from the top down. And if you have a skid plate, make sure you really get in there because it'll hold mud and dirt and that sort of thing too. So you have to really get, you know, in between the skid plate and the engine. Okay, that's the front half. Looks time consuming, doesn't it? It is kind of time consuming. However, if you want to keep your bike looking good, and even though this bike has been gone through many times over the years, this bike is 15 years old. And people guess it's 2020, 2019. They have no idea what year it is as far as how clean it stays. You know, when I'm at the track or whatever, everyone asks what year the bike is because they can't tell. Okay, so now we're going to simple green the rear portion. And, you know, I'm taking extra time because I'm talking to you guys. But you kind of want to move along pretty quickly, you know, when you're spraying this stuff on and scrubbing it and all that. You don't want to just leave it on there for, you know, for several minutes or anything. You want it to get cleaned off quickly. And it is a very windy day here. You know, we had a pretty huge rainstorm last night here in Atlanta, and then the cold front came through, and woo, 20-mile-per-hour winds, and temperature dropped 20 degrees. Okay, so we're simple greening basically everything else. I only try to let this stuff sit, you know, for a minute or less if I can help it. Okay, now the rear tires. There's only one, the rear tire. Now you also see why it's easier to, you know, have the bike up off the ground like this. Rim, spokes, brake caliper, swing arm, everything. You can scrub the chain also, you know. It won't hurt anything, that's for sure. A clean chain is a happy chain. Under the fender also, behind the number plates. I know this is probably boring the tears out of some of you, but I do get, you know, the question asked quite often is, how do I keep the bike so clean? It, you know, it doesn't clean itself, that's for sure. All right, rinse her off. Looking good. Something else to make sure you have a little exhaust plug. See that little guy there out of the silencer? Make sure you have some kind of plug that's for a 4-stroke, 2-stroke, anything. Make sure you have one of those, because you definitely don't want to be spraying water inside there. So you can get those anywhere, and I'll put links down below for everything you've seen here as far as, you know, devices and solutions and whatnot. Now the tires haven't dried off yet, but notice they're looking very black and shiny, as is everything else. Honestly, you're probably washing it, you know, like 3 times. You're washing it off about 3 times throughout this whole process. Probably looks, yeah, it's easier to see from this angle. Looking good. Okay, and then, you know, if you're satisfied with everything, tires look good. Look how dark and black they are. And the next video, we're going to do a bit on tires, because one guy asked, you know, about what tires I use, how long do they last, you know, how long do I keep them on, that sort of thing. So we'll do that in the next video. But that's looking good though. Oh, and the final step, take the bike off of the work stand and then lay it over on its side, you know, put the handlebar on the top of the work stand and then clean underneath it. I'm going to show you what dirt I've missed, even though I've been pretty thorough doing this. I'm going to show you after I put the bike on a side stand, you know, leaning on its side, what it looks like underneath. So hang tight. All right, we got her laying on her side now, if you can see that. So I basically put the handlebar on the on the work stand. Make sure your petcock is turned off, of course. And of course this bike is not that bad because I didn't ride in muddy conditions last time. But underneath, you can see some areas that it's, you know, got some mud buildup, usually under the chain guide, under the you know, pivot of the suspension. Got a few areas where it's a little muddy around the petcock up there, but it's not bad because I didn't ride in muddy conditions last time. Okay, so I'm gonna gently, you know, spray Simple Green underneath it and then rinse it off again. Okay, so here we go. Alrighty, then you could flip it over and lay it on its other side. I won't show you that because we've seen enough already. But yeah, you'll see when you lay it on its side and you can get underneath and you can find hiding mud and dirt that you never knew was there. And you try to keep these bikes as clean as possible. And then after you've finished rinsing thoroughly and all that, you'll stand her back up and then we'll hit it with the leaf blower and dry it off thoroughly. All right, we've got her stood up again and I'm satisfied with how clean it is. So now we'll dry it off with the leaf blower. You can use any leaf blower, but this happens to be a Steel BG56C. I've got a few videos on this as well, you know, as far as doing tune-ups and servicing and whatnot, so check out other videos on that. All right. Very time consuming, I know. But she is looking good. Well, it's a he. Whatever. I call it Mr. White. The final step I do is, of course, lubricate the chain. And you can take you some, WD-40 or some kind of rust inhibitor, and I wipe it on the expansion chamber. But at the very least, you should, make sure it's clean and dried off completely. That way you won't get any surface rust buildup on a works pipe like this. But yeah, it's a good idea just to spray a little WD-40 or anything that's, rust preventative, and just leave it on there. But looking good. Very nice, right? Underneath everywhere. And in a nutshell, that is basically it.